Go, Mek We Chat.
Jerry, we on here.
Go ahead.
Jerry?
Beverly, you
Jerry's
take it
froze.
away. I think Jerry is frozen.
I think he is frozen. Well, look at that, folks. Good evening, and welcome. We have to wait on our host to unfreeze. There he is.
There
Are
he
you
is.
back with us, Jerry?
I think so.
Okay, well, we are on air, so you can go ahead and welcome our listeners and viewers, and let's get this chat on the way.
It's February 27th. It's Thursday evening, and it's time for another edition of Mek We Chat. Mek We Chat, we call it the round time meeting with the news. And yeah, we keep it light, but we keep it right. And so this evening, I'm Jerry George welcoming practically all of the suspects, just missing Dwight at this point in time. George Grant, as usual, is at Master Control. Atlee is there in Dominica, Richie in somewhere in the States. At least I know Margaret is in New York. So she tell us. Catherine is in London.
You
And
sure about that?
that's what I
You
said.
sure
So
about that?
she tell us that. So we could, and we kind of just believe her. That's the producer is in Grenada. Bev, what do you have for us to kick off with this evening?
Well, good evening, and as I'm about to kick off, I have to say welcome to Dwyer. I see his window just lit up, and that's not the usual suspect. That's the one who assists the usual suspect in getting set up. So, welcome, young Astafan.
Daddy!
All right. Well, the prevailing conversation is certainly going to be part of our discussion, and that is COVID-19. And last week, we did not really get to discuss the CARICOM club meeting, so we want to look at it. And we want to look at the Speaker of the House of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I saw a cartoon today that says Jexit. It was most hilarious.
That he jumps it.
So we have a Jexit in St. Vincent. The speaker has walked. I think it's the first time I've ever seen a speaker resign in this region. And Black History Month, it's winding down, just 2 more days to go. We get an extra day because it's a leap year. But we want to look at Black History Month. Does it resonate with Blacks? So that's what we have on the menu for discussion. But this is Mek We Chat, so we can chat about anything while it's relevant, while it's important. And if it becomes part of the conversation, we will deal with it. Right, folks?
So be it.
Right. So take it away, Jerry. You can jump off with any topic.
I just think we need to jump off with COVID-19. Every time I basically go on, I see some new piece of data that seems to get just more and more worrying. And worrying from another perspective is that, as I said this morning on my show, in the region, I am not seeing sufficient of our own exports giving direction, making analysis, helping our people to understand. All of the information we're getting is coming from outside, and I think we have people who have similar training. Unless a minister of government or somebody from a government perspective says something, there is nothing said about this. And there is so much out there. This is so much direction to give. And so for me, it's kind of frightening because yes, people would prefer sometimes not to hear. That's just how we are. Sometimes when things seem a little too much for us. But I believe there's a responsibility for us to keep people informed, to keep people in the know. And we're failing with that tremendously in the region. Right now in Barbados, there's a cruise ship, the Carnival Fascination, I think it's called, sitting out in the slipstream. Why? Because three of the passengers on board have come down with some kind of flu-like disease. They rejected it in St. Kitts, and they were going to Barbados to pick up another 150 passengers. And obviously, Barbados is what they call a home port. So they land passengers and take on passengers. And because there was a hue and cry, the Prime Minister said, okay, we'll test them. And if the test returns negative, then people can disembark. So it sits out there for the next, I think the test takes, well, let's say 4 hours. Up until a while ago, nothing had happened. Then we had a situation in Martinique. Similarly, another boat, this time they had 300 passengers on board that ship that were ill. So this thing is going to do a number on us, like it or not. And it is because of that I feel that people in the region with the skills have to begin to help us understand what is happening. Fortunately, that is not happening.
Yeah, I think it's a case. I totally agree with the dearth of information, but I don't believe that the authorities have a lot of information to share with us because
Who do you call the authorities?
like the WHO, like the CARFA, like the regional health authorities, the ministries of health, the senior medical officers, and these people, I just don't think they have a lot of information. Scientists worldwide are actually reacting to COVID-19. They're chasing the disease to see how it works. So
I'm not asking for information about the disease, how it works, and all of that. That's
no,
not what I'm looking for. Is the awareness and stuff that I think is lacking.
That is where I'm going. And even internationally, the scientists and the people in those fields are busy trying to track the disease, and awareness, preparedness, protection, and that kind of thing. Everything flows from that. Because when you don't know what you're dealing with, you don't know how to deal with it. But the general information which is out there is not even being reinforced by our health officials, which is the washing of the hands, the avoiding unnecessary contact, keeping your hands off your face, try not to, we like to huggy with everybody, but try not to do that because you still do not have nearly enough information on how the virus traveling. Now we're hearing that it is mutating. Now we're hearing that it's taking on HIV-like properties. We're hearing so many things about the virus. So we just have to act based on what we know about other viruses, which is try to keep your hands clean, keep washing the hands, keep washing it off, because it's when you touch it and put it on the soft tissues like the nostril or the mouth. Those are the areas they say where they believe it gets into the body and then goes into the lungs where it attaches and then duplicates itself. That is some information that I've seen come out. I saw it today. I don't know when it came out, but I saw it today. So it goes into the lungs, it attaches, and then it duplicates itself. And when it's duplicating, of course, it's eating away your cells within your lungs, and that is where the difficulty in breathing comes, and the rest that goes with it. So I just believe, I agree with you, Jerry. There is not enough talking to the people in the region. And a lot of the talk is just to bash people who say stuff. And if information is out there and you repeat it, why are our health authorities jumping up and down, calling everything fake news, telling us not to follow what we hear out there when they do not have any information to give us?
You know what really bothers me though? Couple things. I mean, when I think of this virus, I look back at other circumstances in which we've been threatened by medical or by natural phenomena, and I'm doing an assessment of how have we behaved in those circumstances. How have we prepared ourselves to deal with threats which we didn't even completely understand? Because truth be said, truth be told, we don't even fully understand hurricanes, right? Because hurricanes are quite skittish and unpredictable, as we have proof of in the last few years. But we have made a very serious attempt at, to go to Jerry's point, sharing the information with the public that we have.
Mhm.
So that at least there is some sense of awareness. We hear people saying that they don't want to do that because they don't want to cause a panic. Well, my goodness, if you properly share the information in a non-panic manner, you know, you have a chance that a greater segment of the population would stand at the ready to cooperate with medical authority if and when you actually have to deal with the phenomenon in either a hurricane or in this case the virus. And I find it odd and frankly hypocritical that there's a certain ease with which we end up accusing China of hiding information while we ourselves appear not to be very forthcoming with the information that we have. If it is flu-like, well, let us use the flu, which everybody knows about, as a template, as a baseline, and say, well, here's what's similar about it. Here's why it's flu-like, but here is what is different. That's an approach to the lesson that could
Exactly.
be taken with school children, could be taken with the public, the adult public, but that is what I am not hearing. Instead, we appear to be confronted by a PR exercise where officialdom seems intent on convincing us that they have everything under control. That's not the issue. The issue is what it is you have under control. What is this thing that you don't want to talk about, but you have control over? You know? So it is, you know, and that's why I think CARICOM continues to disgustingly disrespect the people of CARICOM, the officials of CARICOM, to assume that the public wouldn't be able to handle information and hence you must keep it away from them. We have handled information on chronic non-communicable diseases. We are more alert to HIV/AIDS. We're more alert to the issue of prenatal and postnatal issues that can kill babies. Only because there's been a constant sharing of information. Nobody's asking for answers yet, because there are none. But we're simply asking to be sensitized. And I'm not getting that. When I read Mr. LaRoque's, the Secretary General's summary and statement of the situation of how we have prepared, we've taken all these measures. And when I read and saw the details, what he is referring to as measures that they have taken to sort of prepare us to deal with that is a bunch of meetings. We've met with PAHO. We've met with WHO. We've met with SIDEMA. So what in heaven's name are you meeting about? That's the core information that doesn't come out at all from the CARICOM Secretariat or the CARICOM leadership. They are not talking about it. Our Prime Minister was on the radio today. You know what he was talking about? Oh, we must get together and do an assessment of Carnival. And we must, find ways to improve the Carnival and to draw more tourists to Dominica for Carnival. That's our leader.
Exactly.
In the face of the virus.
No, but Ati, I made that point the other day. That the Prime Minister was on air on the Sunday.
Yeah.
His usual thing. And he said nothing about the virus.
So it makes
And
you
that
feel
particular weekend is one of the weekends that we had the first set of Chinese being quarantined and stuff. Total confusion. He
there you
said
go.
nothing about it.
So the question is, what are they hiding? What is so awful and horrible that you can't level with us and tell us? Have you ever heard any one of them say, "We don't know, I don't know, I don't understand"? No, they wouldn't even admit that. So, I mean,
But let me just point out a couple of things here. In the health minister in Canada says, stockpile foods and medicines in case of infection.
yeah.
And to me, that is the kind of stuff that you can say.
But of course, people
It's just like
understand.
when there is a hurricane season, we tell people buy Cricks biscuits, buy stuff,
Yeah,
and put it up.
yes, I.
Because if this thing comes through, we human nature is so terrible during a time like this. But something else has just come in from PAHO, and PAHO urges the region to ramp up. Hold on, just let me get this preparation. And this is PAHO, the Pan American Health Organization, is urging countries in the region to intensify their plans to prepare and respond to COVID-19, given the appearance of cases of the new disease in the Americas. We have Latin America, we have scare going on in New York. Who doesn't have somebody in New York? You understand? The advisory comes as Brazil's Ministry of Health confirmed the country's first case yesterday. The patient is a 61-year-old man who recently returned from travel to Italy, where an outbreak of the virus has been ongoing since last week. So PAHO is saying, hey guys, we are all in Latin America, and as a result, we need to be ramping up our preparation. Maybe now we'll hear something said by the authorities. But
today,
unlike, for example,
we picked up a report here that made sense along those lines that you're hinting at, Jerry. It was some nutritionists and others also saying we need to strengthen our immune system. And here's how you do that. You eat a lot of fruit, you eat your vegetables, eat some nuts for protein, drink lots and lots of water. And then, that's something somebody can organize a response to, get some fruit, plant some this, plant some vegetables. I mean, but it's coming from other part. It's not coming from our leadership, and that makes me even more nervous than usual.
But Ati, they don't have to originate the thought.
No.
They just have to understand, and you get pointers of how other people are doing it. Just do it. Just do it. You understand? I mean, the health minister of Canada, you can't be clearer than that. Stockpile food and medicines. Yeah. You know what that means. That is clear and straight. I don't know. I know something here that in Grenada they held 3 Italians and promptly put them into quarantine. There's been a hue cry on Canwan in St. Vincent, where a lot of the guests are coming through from right there. But we don't seem to have the same approach. And it's that PC approach in the region that's going to cause us problems. Because everybody seems to be doing what's comfortable to them. And that to me is what's deadly for us. Because it's not about what's comfortable, it's about what we ought to do.
You see this quarantine thing? I saw videos of a quarantine location. I think it was in Canada. If that is what a quarantine is supposed to be, the closest thing to that is the prison in our societies. It is really isolating people even within the confines of the facility, keeping people away from each other. So really, it is like when you put a prisoner in solitary,
Solitary confinement.
Absolutely. But it's neat, it's clean, it's totally sanitized. When they go outside, they cannot go outside as a group. They have to go outside alone. So where are these quarantine facilities? Have you gone to see the one in Grenada, for example, or St.
Oh
Vincent,
no.
or Barbados? Where are they?
Ministers, we don't know where they
Jer-
are. In fact,
Wait,
in St. Vincent,
Jer-
there was one.
Jer- sorry, Jerry, go ahead.
No, in St. Vincent, they had announced one. And then when the people in the district complained, they pulled back. But they haven't said that they have replaced it. So we don't even know if there has been identified quarantine facilities. We don't even know that.
Well, in Grenada, the authorities have not come out and say, well, quarantine center is here or there. In Jamaica, they have identified where the quarantine facility is. So everybody knows, everybody knows.
Yeah, you
But
have to know.
I think the nation needs to know where these facilities are, or else how does it make sense for other people in your own protection and staying away, just
But
ensuring
add to
that.
that, Beverly, add to that, that wherever it goes in any country, there will be people who, because of fear, object. It is for the government to demonstrate to them that they have this matter properly covered. But simply to withdraw from it because, again, a political decision, because that is all that is. You don't want to run a political risk. So
Yeah.
you just leave the people exposed.
And we have been exposing ourselves in the Caribbean, you see. And I see one of our viewers, listeners on Facebook is asking, but if it is airborne, that is the COVID-19, then does washing of hands alone the answer?
No, not alone, but it's
Not
one
alone.
measure,
Yeah.
not by itself, but that's why I say it goes together with a package. It's like, how do you deal with tuberculosis? There's no
Exactly.
one measure. How do you deal with diabetes? It's always a cluster of things that you have to do, if sometimes in proper sequence, to protect yourself.
And questions like these will arise, Ati, because our health officials here have come out and actually said, that it's easy to prevent COVID-19. All you have to do is keep washing your hands. They have come out and said that on national TV. So you will give people the idea that as long as you keep washing your hands, you can't get COVID-19. And you know that people will believe that and think that if some authority figure said it. And I'm appalled that they would come on national TV and say something like that.
Something I expected to see and still expect to see. I thought by now we would have assembled a multidisciplinary task force, of course, led by people from the medical profession. But you need people in aviation, you need people, who are involved in transportation, people in food production, food handling, and set up a task force like we do for hurricanes.
No, but actually, I have to give
multi-sector task force. Yes?
I have to give St. Lucia credit for that. Because when it broke in St. Lucia, they had exactly that arrangement.
But that's what you
People
must
from
do.
aviation, people from agriculture, people from health. That's how they sat around a table, and there was actually a photograph of around the table. So it wasn't just that I heard it, showing the various disciplines that had come together to make decision on what the next step was. In St. Vincent, over the weekend, we had a situation where the Ministry of Foreign Affairs was putting out a press release as it related to COVID. And that same day, later in the day, the Ministry of Health was putting out one. that kind of madness.
Just causing confusion.
Yes.
And they probably want to hear from Dwyer what's happening up in SKN.
SKN. Good night, all. Sorry to be late. Sorry to be late, and I may have to leave early.
Okay.
I am afraid the situation here is no more encouraging than it is elsewhere. But the question is, are we going to stop people from coming to the region? I mean, this I think management and systems have to be put in place, stopping people from coming to the region. The last time we spoke about this, or the last time I spoke about it on this program some weeks ago, I mentioned cruise ship passengers. We had 4 cruise ships in the harbor today here in Bastia, and 15,000, whatever number of passengers, maybe more, plus crew, coming from all corners of the globe in cruise ships, which I don't want to speak ill of cruise ships, but cruise ships are environments in which these things can do very well, these things that are harmful to us. And there's a cruise ship at dock in Japan, which is a case in point, stalled there at the dock for God knows how much longer. I take Afi's point. We have to take the cluster of actions, some of which are just inculcating good habits in terms of eating and sanitation and hygiene and so forth. But I really don't see how we could do much more. We hear politicians and others saying, we got this covered. I don't know. Well, not only Trump, with the Caribbean versions of Trump.
I know.
The trumpets.
Trumpets.
The trumpets, yes. Yeah.
I like it.
You like it?
As in the rockets.
Yeah, the rockets, yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
we don't know of any, I don't know of any real system that has been put in place to manage this thing. We individually, we don't have the resources. It's good to hear that St. Lucia is being progressive about it. But in little economies, and I'm looking at other aspects of it too, not just people contracting the virus, because I believe that is inevitable. At this stage of the game, I think it's inevitable.
Yep.
The question is mitigating as best we can and putting these things in motion regionally. We really should have a standard approach to this. Exactly. And use all of the resources available to us. But even bringing in resources creates some risk exposure, because some of those human resources who may come in to advise you may themselves be carriers. So this is why I said this. We really are between a hole and a dark place, or a rock and a hard place. So it's really about mitigation and hoping for the best. We import everything. Although it doesn't sound very pleasant, what the minister, as referred to by Jerry in Canada, said is something we should really take on board. Collecting stuff, gathering stuff, because remember, it mightn't be too difficult to truck tons and tons of food and other stuff from Illinois to Florida. It's a completely different kettle of fish. Boating it to St. Vincent from Fort Lauderdale, or God forbid, from China. So I don't mean to scare people.
No, we must stop saying that. Sometimes you have to scare people.
Well, I don't mean to, but
you don't need to, right?
I don't mean to, but the situation is extremely serious in terms while the death rate appears to be low, the mortality rate, every life is precious.
Mhm.
And in addition to the health and life issues directly from the flu, from the virus, sorry, one has to consider the economic and social
Impact.
ramifications of this.
All right, we're gonna hold on the economic and social ramifications. It's
Okay.
8:30. We're gonna take a break on Mek We Chat, and when we come back, definitely look at the social and economic ramifications of COVID-19.
Beverly, as I said, I may have to leave early.
Okay, how early is early?
Um,
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Hey, Lynn.
Hey, neighbor.
Here's the bill I asked you to pay for me.
How did you get your electricity bill to be so low?
For one, we size our transformers just for what we need. And we unplug transformers, chargers, and other devices when they're not in use. We also replaced our light bulbs with LEDs.
They burn less energy, right?
Much less. I even replaced the seal on my refrigerator door to keep the cold air in.
And Grenlec is always advising us not to open the fridge too often.
That's right. And my family washes and irons in bulk.
With fuel prices changing all the time, how do you know if it is working?
We pay attention to the usage history table. Over time, our average usage has decreased.
So while Grenada can't control fuel prices, I can conserve energy and save money.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
that the entire Dominica population was in Roseau. The crowd I saw
Yes,
was just absolutely stunning.
yes, that's right. Yeah, but
Well,
as getting back to Dwyer's point, yeah.
That was then. That was 2 days ago.
Yes.
Okay, this is now.
Mm-hmm.
And while they were together, like glued together on Carnival Monday and Tuesday,
Mm-hmm.
I suspect that as this thing creeps into the area, God forbid, I'm praying I'm wrong, you'll see less social bonding. We already have this disruption to real human bonding from all of these electronic devices and contraptions that we use nowadays in modern things. So God knows in Japan, they've closed down the schools for a month.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're going to have a lot of social, just like Afi said about the quarantine that he saw, he thinks, in Canada. When you isolate human beings from each other, you're going to have some toxic consequences. And now, with China being the main supplier of goods, and I'm no economist, on the planet, and you see the American stock market, which is a separate kind of economy, but it's very real, taking the beating that it is taking, you're going to have problems in terms of supplies of goods. That is going to have a very serious effect on us in these islands. We are already underperforming shamefully and have been for years in terms of food self-sufficiency. It could get worse. The economies of these islands, which depend so much on tourism and depend on outer resources, external resources, could find themselves in serious trouble. These things can add together to form a very poisonous potion that could destabilize these countries in the region. I don't want to be a doomsayer, and I hope I'm wrong.
Doing that.
But these things are possible for the region, and I, for one, am extremely concerned. I will leave it there for now.
Right, and the economic impact, I would certainly invite Jerry to share with us some of the things that he has seen and has talked about in another forum with how the COVID-19 is affecting economies, stock markets, certainly all across the world, and surprisingly, what the IMF has said about it.
I find that what the IMF has said about it is a little counterintuitive, but maybe the concept of the IMF is always to be the diplomats and to try to give that certain sense of let's not panic. But we see what has happened. The impact of COVID so far has gotten to the place where the 2008 economic financial crisis had us. The stock market losses, we're in that, we kind of in that ballpark at the moment. I looked at, I was reading some industry magazines, and they were talking about the fact that, now these days, if you building a vehicle, the parts are made all over, and you simply bring them in and assemble them. Well, car production is going to get a hard hit because you can't get the parts because of the whole loss of flights and the concerns. Food is the same. Walmart's biggest supplier is China. The Walmart we all like to go to buy all the cheap stuff, the biggest supplier and provider is
Made in China.
Yes. So that is going to hit, if that hit Walmart the way it is anticipated, we're going to see a rise in prices for normal stuff, which means that inflation across the world is going to take a hit.
Rising unemployment.
Unemployment, exactly. Then you have the question of inflation. All economic indicators are
We're
right
going the
now,
wrong way.
yes, right now they're going the wrong way.
Yeah,
And
Jerry,
so for the Caribbean,
Actually, we might be
I think what is really happening is that it points towards a recession around the corner. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This morning, one of the major banks, Goldman Sachs, says basically they expect profit in the United States to be basically zero for the year for businesses.
Wow.
Right? The supply chain for drugs, for example, is basically through China. But you know, at some point in time, this was inevitable, and it's just disappointing. You know, these guys who are the CEOs and they've been to all these business schools and such. There are cases which basically point to the dangers of having everything centrally located. So this is what the lessons for China is coming out to be. Why is everything in China? Yeah, it's cheaper and such, but why not diversify? And now it's coming
it's globalization that led us into this mix.
But you see, but it's globalization for on a one-track basis. You know, technically globalization should be multi-pronged. But if everything is going to one country, then you're sort of defeating the purpose. But you are defeating the purpose.
Yeah.
And this is what this is pointing to.
But that one country is now sending us back something.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And it's sending it back in a multi-pronged approach. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't mean to be cynical or sarcastic, but frankly, it may be a good thing in an economic sense. Fewer cars will be produced, lower emissions, cleaner climate.
Yeah, well, I mean,
fewer pharmaceuticals.
As far as the cars, you know, but I think more importantly for the region, though, what has been coming out of this is that someone spoke about the cruise ship in the harbor in Japan, right? What one reporter said, one guy who was on board the ship, is that this is the ultimate petri dish, right? And so it turned out. Because a number of people got ill. What is also pointing out is the cruise ship industry, because of where they bring people from and those people's sanitary levels. That is a problem.
Well, that's my
point. And that is
you're talking about the crew.
The crew, right? All those little cooks and those kind of things who. You know, it's sanitary. If you read the stuff, you know, they tell you wash your hands and this. A lot of those guys, you know, in certain cultures, you know, it's just use it and walk off. But anyhow,
well, you know, that crosses all cultures. That includes.
But beyond that,
well.
the situation is what exists on the ships for these workers, and that is the problem that they're seeing in the cruise ship. As such, now cruise ships bookings are down. I was speaking to some folks in the airline industry. Even the airline industry
would be hit.
The capacity is down, and worse yet, going out to Asia. So you could see the economic contraction around the world, and then of course when the rest of the world have a sneeze, we have pneumonia in the region.
I would argue that what you have just described is not a doomsday scenario, but is a scenario for the salvation of the planet. Because what we have been doing for the last how many decades is pursuing an economic, consumption-driven economic model.
That's not sustainable.
That is not only not sustainable, but that is destroying the planet.
Yes,
look at garbage. Look at waste in our tiny little islands. 30 to 40% of our waste stream is packaging material.
But I see.
So my point, though, Richie, is simply this: that it is not all doom and gloom, but in fact we have to see the bright side.
Yeah.
We have to see the bright side to this thing. You know, pharmaceuticals are killing people as much as guns are. A lot of them are, because they're coming from a country, as you pointed out, largely now, where regulatory and controls and so forth are not what we expect them to be. So we're getting garbage. And who's consuming that? It's the most vulnerable segments of our populations. People will buy a medicine that is cheaper, not that is better. So I am not one of those who slams the door on that. And then with the IMF is what they refer to as the banker of last resort. That is the banker that countries go to when all else fails. When the economy is in an advanced state of collapse, their debt is out of control, there are no reserves that can be accumulated and so forth. And what we are describing is a situation where the world economy as we know it is likely to unravel. And we will unravel with it because we have thrown away our modus of production that allowed us to feed ourselves with healthy vegetables and root crops and fruits. And instead we've gone to the supermarkets.
Okay, I think, and I agree with you in the context of all of what you've said. How do we wriggle out of this? What do we need to do? Because you'll have other more resourceful countries fixing themselves. How do we get out of this and how long will it take? And where is the leadership? And where is the leadership? And in the meantime, how much suffering will there be?
That's the problem. Okay, I'm one of those who believes there's something that was put together back in the 80s in the Caribbean called the Caribbean Food and Nutrition Plan. If you look at all the recommendations being made today about immune system strengthening and so forth, it all has to do with what you eat. That Caribbean Food and Nutrition Plan, which also paralleled the Caribbean Food and Nutrition Institute in Jamaica, which helped drive the science behind what should be produced where. That plan, in 1 year, that plan would have eaten away at our malnutrition issues, at our food import issues, and would have created more jobs than any factory, physically built factory could have. Because our farming communities, our food processing, you talked about shipping and transportation, we would have restored an intra-regional shipping way to get food from St. Vincent to St. Kitts, from Dominica to the Virgin Islands, etc., which we used to have in place much more than we have now. And it would not have involved using tropical shipping or beneath. It would have involved using ships that we used to build. I'm not saying you go back in time to the point where you had a pui and you row, but I'm saying we modernize the things that we know we used to do and did well. Because interestingly, modern health science is telling us it is those things that kept us healthy. The exercise, the clean air, the absence of the use of toxic chemicals and substances in agriculture and farming, the consumption of fresh fruit and fresh produce, that the food miles was not a factor because the food came from the next village over the next island over.
But
so and that would not take more than a year to fix.
You think?
I know.
Okay, brother.
But the one factor in it, the big question mark is the leadership factor.
No, yes.
But
I want you to be correct, I want you to be correct.
Ati, with all due respect, I must say I have to challenge you as far as the 1 year. Having worked throughout the region, I really don't see that happening. I mean, I know it's an ideal.
The science of it is all possible.
Yeah, I'm not worried about
root crops that will take more than 10 months to grow.
I'm not worried about the science of it.
Within what I know you're heading to is the reason it wouldn't be done in a year is because you'll have a lot of dumbheads sitting in decision-making positions, still wanting to rob the treasury. So, what do we do with that?
But even as Bev mentioned a few weeks ago, the special interests, how do you get around those? And that's what kills us in the region.
Now, here's the macabre conclusion submission I would put to that.
Okay.
Maybe, and I don't mean for this to happen, but maybe what it is. Maybe the virus needs to take out certain kinds of people. in our society. I'm really there. I'm really there. You know, if some of us have to go with it, fine. But we cannot keep on sacrificing an entire population of 5+ million Caribbean people, you know, just because we treat as sacrosanct those who hold public office when they hold that office, you know, supposedly to look after our interests. That can make no sense.
But
is it that the virus must now come into the Caribbean and take out a few thousand Caribbean people, including some of them? Or should we now offer them all a trip on a cruise ship somewhere and send them on a long cruise?
A long cruise.
The petri dish.
I'm really serious. People, you see, the more we pussyfoot and mamby-pamby with what we know, every problem we discuss, it comes back to this one thing of leadership as being the sticking point. And the longer we delay dealing with that and getting rid of that one way or the other, I'm sorry for people, you know, Dwyer will lose all his hair.
Happy.
And
nearly
all
all
we
gone.
still have that problem.
All right, I want to keep our Facebook friends included in the conversation. So Victor Salopwi says, not one government in the region has said they provided masks for public. However, one PM of the OECS says he will supply masks to China when all masks on Amazon and eBay are made in China. I'm trying to understand this, so maybe one of you have that sort of minister.
That PM is my PM. He offered 10,000 masks to China as his contribution to them dealing with their crisis.
But
has he offered any masks to Grenada?
But actually, as far as the directives are concerned, I mean, they really do not recommend the masks as the savior for all. Is what Bevan was speaking about earlier, washing the hands, staying away from the interpersonal contacts. Jerry, I sent you a whole list in your email. So,
well, Richie,
it's those type of things. Yeah, well, you know.
Well, and actually, the mask will work better for the person who is sick as opposed to the person who is not sick.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's this one that made that offer.
Right.
Well, is it that the mask is not effective for the person who is not sick?
Actually, because when somebody sneezes, it has to do with a sneeze and how far things pitches and where it goes.
Or 15 feet.
Right. So that mask helps to block that spread.
We need to keep 15 feet from each other.
Well, actually, the recommendation is 6 feet.
From the one who's infected.
Yeah, from the infected.
Well, how do you know?
Well,
that's the thing. We don't know.
You see now, Afi, this might be up your alley, Afi. In terms, well, if you have to be 15 feet away, we're not going to make a lot of babies
from a sneeze.
We're not going to be making a lot of babies now.
Oh gosh.
That's a little light moment. Sorry about that.
There's a new technology I should tell you about when we
artificial insemination. I heard about it.
Oh gosh. All right.
No, but this is in my view,
yes,
perhaps the most serious challenge the region has faced, other than, of course, the hurricanes and the earthquakes and all of those other things, in a long time. And I don't sense the hands-on urgency in the leadership. And it seems that our people are going around, you know, as if nothing is happening.
Yeah, it's business as usual.
Our people, it doesn't seem to bother anybody.
In some countries, for example, in Trinidad, it was more important to get Carnival done.
Yes, you know.
Simple.
But don't you all think that if we treated the virus, this COVID-19, as we have treated successfully other public health issues, that we would place ourselves in a great position? And I can't for the life of me understand why PAHO, which was at the forefront of treating with malaria and typhoid and tuberculosis and so forth back in the day, and helping us as tiny, little uneducated populations, getting rid of those things from our health profile by massive public education, by community-based cleansing and removing of breeding sites for mosquitoes and so forth. I mean, that's how you deal with a public health issue, and this is a public health issue.
And more.
But yeah, why have we forgotten that?
I think we have to remember that this thing it hasn't hit the Caribbean yet. I mean, the main thing is preparation.
That's it.
And that's when there's an absence of leadership. But again, I do not think that you necessarily need to wait on a politician to get things done. So, for example, guys like Jerry and George and such with their various radio programs, there's enough information out there which could start to be put out there by private folks.
It's getting out, beginning slowly. Yeah,
I will tell you this. I could claim that I was the first person to publish something with this virus, and consistently have done it day in, day out. Every bit of information I get out there. But that's the problem.
Sounds a bit Trumpish to me.
What's that?
Sounds a bit Trumpish. I was the first.
No, I am sorry. Listen, as Paul said, if you want me to boast, I will boast.
Jerry, you're just harassing.
All right. But I'm just saying, when I first read this thing the very first time, this was something like mid-December. I'm going like, really? This is what they're saying about this thing?
That's right.
And I'm going like, for true? And I have never taken my eyes off of it. Never. And then when it started to erupt, then most people started to look at it. But I am saying this is where we need the people who are trained in public health, as Ati said. Ati, let me tell you something, what has gone, I can't say wrong, but the leadership, remember one time the lady from Dominica was the head of PAHO?
She is, still.
She came back, yes, that's right.
Yeah, she's still
back now. But before the years between the PAHO was led by a lot of people from out of Latin America. And so the issues were different, the focus was different, and I suspect that we kind of fell off the radar. Even though that lady is now still back in charge, I bet you that a lot of the people with whom she works are Latin Americans. And so the focus on these islands are not the same. But we have sufficient people who have been trained, who understand what PAHO is saying, who understand what the WHO is saying. They go to all of these things. I don't think we need PAHO and them to come back themselves.
Let me reinforce your point. The doctor, Dr. Carissa Etienne, who is the head of PAHO, she made her name and her fame in primary health care. She developed an approach to primary and preventative healthcare and treatment in Dominica that Cornell University and other major medical centers throughout the world used as the model to teach about primary healthcare. That is who is the head of PAHO today.
But I hear the arguments and such, but I think we're getting away from the point. And what the focus has to be what can be done in the interim, in the absence of leadership. What can be done? Who can step into the breach? So this is what I'm saying, is it has to be the private sectors, the guys who do the blogs, the folks who have radio programs, whatever. And I mean, it's just the whole idea of repeating the information that WHO is putting out. I mean, everybody is using the WHO guidelines as the
gospel
standard, So, and then if you want, you could go to CDC, you could go to NIH. But the fact of the matter is, putting information out to explain to people where we need to be going. Forget the politicians. If we bog down worried about politicians and leadership, we're going to go nowhere.
All right.
But sometimes
Let me take some more comments from our friends on Facebook just before we go to the break. And the challenge we have, Richardson, is that when we put information out there, politicians come back and say it's fake news. So we have that to deal with.
But you source
Alma Smith says, visitors will not feel safe coming to the region if there is all talk and no decisive action taken, which instills confidence in people. Victor Salopwe came back and said visitors could be infected as well, bear that in mind. What these people need to do is look at ways to supply each other's needs for food and other commodities, which will be in short supply. John Franco says, with all this knowledge, why in God's name are they not prepared? And
Sure.
he comes back and says, if we had sustainable farming as we should, the doom could be curtailed. Ricardo Keynes Douglas says, is it my imagination, but do you all feel that the Caribbean governments are rather lax about the coronavirus? Just asking. And he says, Minister of Health in Canada has just put out a statement saying to stock up on food, medicines, etc., and be prepared just in case. So let's take our break and come back, and then we'll take your comment on the fake news thing, Richardson.
I'm always on the move.
Never want to respond to it.
Training, traveling, competing. So it's good to know I have Quad Bank in the palm of my hand.
Introducing e-banking, one of many customer convenience services from Grenada Cooperative Bank, and there's more to come.
It's swift, simple, and secure.
Welcome home.
Together with you, our customers, we energize our community.
Together with you, we energize our economy.
We are working together to give our nation a better tomorrow.
With you, we energize our future. Together, we energize our nation.
Thank you for partnering with us as we energize our Spice Island.
Renlec, energizing our Grenada.
Juve chocolates, cocoa nibs, and cocoa balls from Diamond Estate Grenada are now available at Amazon.com, Amazon.ca, Amazon.co.uk, and GrenadaMarket.com. Try their sensational touch of nutmeg and a touch of ginger chocolates, 75% dark and rich, 100% pure cocoa, and their 60% dark and sweet chocolate bars today. Amazon Prime members enjoy free shipping on these orders in the USA, Canada, and Europe. GrenadaMarket.com. When you can't come to the island, the products of the island will come to you.
Dominica? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
You get fresh fruit juice every day, plenty.
Fresh.
And I'm telling you, these are some of the measures that would instantly build up our capacity to deal with the virus, but also build up the base of that new economy. Because we would have the fruit. It would do both. Running on many tracks. To use Rich's word, on multiple tracks. You know, food production, processing, you have to transport, you know, and the transport is not far. Look, we could almost
all
see
the
each other.
logistics, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you now have a double imperative to do it, because you need to do it to stay healthy, as well as to make money.
It's what is called first
I
mindset.
think we're back, you know. I
Yeah.
absolutely believe we're back. So take it away, Jerry. But before you take it away, Jerry, I think I want to squeeze in a few of these comments again before we go back. Desaline Johnson says, the Tumpocrats of the Caribbean have no real system in place to deal with the virus if it takes root in the Caribbean. We as a people can't continue to put tourism before the life of our people. Grenada in particular have many students in China. Oh, this is a long one. I don't think I'll get to all of it. The foreign minister came on GBN News some weeks ago to reassure the people of Grenada the students are safe and well looked after by the authorities in China. And if my memory serves me right, he also mentioned the ambassador is in constant contact with the students. The ambassador is his daughter. Today you hear the students taking a stand and speaking up about lack of care, neglect, and the abandonment. They have actually put out a petition asking people to sign the petition to bring them back home. I don't know how effective that will be, but it's just a reflection of how they are feeling out there and how much they want to get home. Fitzmore Cadogan says Jerry having fun because he knew that the man first on the left was speaking the truth. And I don't know which one he's seeing first on the left, but and Ricardo Keynes Douglas says the best mask is the N95. Now let's get back to our usual suspects.
Yeah, no, this, in the case of, for example, the students, if we had...
No, before we go to the students, Richardson wanted to say something about the politician's response, and Dwyer wanted to respond to something that
that's right.
Richardson said. Yeah.
No. What I was saying, Bev, is that you mentioned that people say it's fake news, and not meaning to be too academic, but the best thing to do is to quote your sources of where you're getting the information from. So, for example, if Jerry has WHO information, and NYC has CDC or NIH or whoever, the Europeans, let's post it, and people can post it and say this is where it comes from. That's all, and leave it be. Who want to believe, fine. Who don't, fine. I mean, we live in a democratic world.
Right. Go ahead, Dwyer.
Well, also, and the leaders, the politicians, the government must play their role as well. You have thousands upon thousands of citizens, children, and young people in our schools. Most of our schools are government administered schools. They must send people into those schools to sensitize them to this, because we all have this culture in the Caribbean, school children say. So the school children can carry the information into the homes and communities and help to raise the level of awareness. But this, I don't sense that happening here in St. Kitts, and I don't know if it's happening in the islands, but this is a way, it's also a way, to Afi's point, to help get this cultural, economic sea change that is so necessary for us to get on a proper keel, if you will, an even keel in terms of strengthening our immune systems, solidifying our food production, our economic basis, and that sort of thing. The governments, in addition to putting precautionary health systems and protocols in place, must be involved in an information system, both to the general public directly and to the general public through the schools, in my view. And I don't see that happening. I don't see it happening. They have to encourage you. Sorry,
not meaning to cut you, but
no, that's okay.
You're working around, you're speaking around an issue there that someone mentioned earlier before.
With
the social media platforms, right? Now, technically, a global WhatsApp message could be sent to everyone, basically saying, these are the ways to protect yourself against it. These are the things you need to be doing. Same could be done on Facebook and Twitter and all of this sort of stuff.
Yes.
So you could use the social platforms for good rather than the scandalous type
I agree.
things.
I agree.
So,
I agree.
So, there are various approaches, Bev, as you were saying. Instead of dealing with the politicians and this thing could be chipped away at another level.
No, I don't disagree with you. I am saying they're complementary.
I agree.
Not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And the demonstrations in the schools can be done dramatically. They just don't have to be verbal presentations.
And what I'm saying, Dwyer Richardson, is just that the fake news pushback from the authorities is just another challenge we have to deal with in putting our information out there, because you have to put the information out, cite the sources, convince people to pay attention, and then, we also have to deal with this pushback. So it's just one other layer added, which we would really prefer not to have to deal with in the midst of this serious situation, but we have to. And we have to get around it and ensure that people are at least listening to the message. And I see someone on Facebook says, "Boss, this is serious." So I'm glad that people are listening and taking it serious, because
Yes.
we have to protect ourselves the best way we can. We have to. And I can guarantee every single person listening that not one politician out there cares about you and your family as much as you do. It doesn't matter what they stand up on any platform and say, they don't. So it's up to you to do what you can and do what is necessary to ensure that prevention is certainly always the best option. So we just have to continue pounding the message and just do what we can to get people to listen.
Could I add to a point that Dwyer made and another point that Richie made? On Dwyer's point, when you speak about the children in schools, you've identified a critical, vulnerable segment of our population. They depend on the society for to look after their welfare. But there are others. I'll just add the elderly. People are living longer.
Yes.
The homebound, the
Yes.
physically challenged.
Yes.
Even people who are incarcerated.
Yes.
Etc. etc. So it seems to me that to go to Richardson's point now, that these are things that citizens groups can actually take up.
Yes.
As a child, I used to be taken to visit people at the infirmary and the hospital every Sunday afternoon, and to bring them some cheer. That is possible. And then Richie, I'm glad you raised the question of the platforms and the social platforms and so on, because we could be consulting even now with people in Singapore, with people in China, without having to come into physical contact with them. We could be using the highway, the internet highway, to do that. In other words, I was waiting to hear if our leaders and the medical officials of the region had been in contact via, what do you call it when, Zoom or Skype or whatever, some other some safe mechanism for finding out and consulting with your peers, your colleagues who are in the fire. But you are now wanting to hear from them, and once a week you could have, something, a discussion that would help put people's minds at rest. To know that, yes, at least we're talking to them fellas over there, and you can even broadcast segments of those conversations on public media or on social media. So it seems to me that it comes back to the very, very first point Jerry was making. What are we really doing? What is it that we are serious? Are we seized of the seriousness of the situation? Do we even realize that maybe our leadership in the region over the last 10, 20, 30 years has taken advantage of crisis of one kind or another to sort of put a fast one over on the population? And could this not be another situation that they're rubbing their hands together and say, oh boy, this will divert attention away from my misgivings and my misdoings and my corruption and my robbing of this and this and that, and then we can slip
and
some
the selling of the passports.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bill. And also back to the IMF. The IMF comes in as the banker of last resort, and they often come with structural adjustment type programs that have attached to them, in many cases, some very onerous conditionalities. In a situation where your economy has collapsed or is getting ready to collapse, and you have debt that you are unable to service, you have no reserves, etc., etc. You could literally see an IMF program, as the IMF has done in the past in many countries, that says you are not going to be allowed to spend so much on health or on education or on public services because you need to service your debt, because that's what the IMF as a banker institution does. It's not as, and it's as stark as that. So I am saying another storm on the horizon would be the economic adjustment. Who will guide and drive and shape that economic adjustment? The same leaders who cannot get rid of TB and typhoid and tuberculosis and now a virus, who cannot even make sure that garbage is properly picked up and disposed of and recycled and so forth and so on. They will guide us on an economic path that would actually, come on.
No,
So,
but Athi, they just had a club meeting last
club
week
meeting.
or the week before. Yes. And
Mohammed,
not even COVID-19 was discussed in any serious way in that meeting. And it's one of the items we wanted to look at this evening, you know, because what really came out of that meeting? What?
you tell me.
Let me just say something before we go on to some of what came out of that CARICOM meeting. Part of the reason why we're struggling with getting information out is that our politics have basically destroyed the NGOs that once were there.
Yeah.
All of the NGOs have been corrupted or taken over.
Or
The last remaining one that is still, in some instances, struggling is the trade unions. But if you look at what is happening with the trade unions, they too are under threat. But all of the other institutions, the civic institutions, they're no longer there. And so what you find happening, even in this business of transmission of information, it is looked at from whence it came, or from whom it came. And so people look at who says it, and the first thing they're thinking about is their political coloration. And if so-and-so says it, and he is felt to be X party, then ignore it, or play it down. So really and truly what we have created are societies in which the only people who have right to speak is the Prime Minister or the politicians.
Hey, Jerry. Hello?
Go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, I think, and I don't mean to sound harsh, but I think you guys focus too much on these people. As I said before, we have an opportunity. Let me just finish. I heard you.
No, you broke me, so just wait a
minute.
minute.
All right, okay, fair enough.
Let us stop playing that game, because that's a game we're playing. If we are saying that we have destroyed the NGOs, it's not about focusing on the politicians. It's focusing on what we have to deal with now. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. The NGOs that we used to use in the past are no longer at our availability.
Why not?
That's the reality.
Whose fault is it, Jerry?
All of us.
Exactly.
Because what we have allowed to happen is that we have allowed the NGOs to be corrupted, to be taken over. People come in and they literally skive off somebody for a political party. And that is what has happened. Let us not pretend that that's not missing. That's the problem. And if we're going to fix it, we can't fix it without understanding, because I said it, the only people right now who seem to have the right to speak is a politician. That's the problem we're facing. We have the tools, we have all the technology, but that is where the problem lies.
So Jerry, let me ask you something. Let me ask you something. Given this situation as you laid out, right? How do you get word to the populations as to what appropriate measures to take, understanding the reality you have, as you have said? What do you do?
I'm a publicist. Let me tell you, the first thing that I don't think oftentimes we understand is, in the past 20 years ago, we basically had one government radio station and a TV station. That was the mass media. Today we have, in some countries, they have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 radio stations, each of them with their own audience. And that's where the challenge lies. Some of the radio stations are just intent on playing music. Unless we have a position where people are told, listen, in a time like this, you have to give X amount of time to public service announcements in a time like this. These stations will play music non-stop. And no matter how serious the problem is, they will never bring it as part of their programming. So that's one of the problems. We have a split up audience. Somebody has to take charge and say, okay, we have to get a certain amount of information out to the audiences. And I don't think our political leaders have the will to do that right now. Because if they did that, they're going to lose votes.
Right, so let us see if we can squeeze in something else, because we are fast running out of time. Jerry, speak to us about the resignation of your Speaker of the House, please.
You mean Jumzit?
Yes, we have a Jexit.
We have an interesting situation in St. Vincent where the Speaker of the House, he goes back a long way in terms of his own political involvement and his involvement, for sure, with the current leader of government in St. Vincent. But somehow he found himself falling out with the party with which he belonged. He ran as a candidate in the last election and found out in the course of the last year that he was not going to be used again as a candidate. But having said that, he writes every week a column in the newspaper, and some of his writings have been rather critical of the government of which he is part. So I think it was only a matter of time before the falling out came. In October last year, I think it was October, September, the Prime Minister, because he had to pull up the Prime Minister in the Parliament, the Prime Minister turned to him and says, I know you have something in your craft for me, you know. But that was the time when it had become clear that they had gone around him and chosen a new candidate for the constituency that he was running in. The other thing that has happened is that he has taken up two very prominent cases as a lawyer, and won them, both of them against the government. One of the cases is where three persons resigned their jobs to go and run for the opposition in the 2010 elections. Having sat down with the Prime Minister and having been given the assurance by the Prime Minister that yes, you could resign and you will get back your jobs. When they didn't succeed, they were told that no, you can't get back your jobs, that the whole concept of you resigning and getting back your job, the Prime Minister said that was aspirational. It's not possible under the Constitution. Well, he took the matter to court and won the case. There was another case where this guy was, who again was actually a supporter of the government, but he was in a state of falling out, and he was the principal of a school in the country. And the Prime Minister went to that school unannounced, not letting the principal know, went into a classroom and started to engage the class and the teachers. And the principal basically went and told him how he felt about it. I understand in some very strong language. The Prime Minister had him removed and sent to Nemo, which is the we all know who Nemo is, NADMA in Grenada, the Met people. That matter Jomo took to court also and won the case. The guy was restored, all of his benefits, they had to pay him. So you have this person that's part of your quote unquote government, but by doing things like that, I guess he was considered to be a traitor, turncoat. What's the other word is used again?
We get the drift.
Yes, you get the drift, right? So the most important thing, though, that happened in his tenure as Speaker, 2 years ago, a motion of no confidence was brought to the House. And boy, you talk about waffling. And the leader of the House convinced the Speaker that you could take the motion of no confidence and turn it into a motion of confidence because they had the majority. Which is what happened.
Oh gosh, I had to fall off his chair.
Really?
He did?
I am serious. Serious. So that afternoon in the House of Parliament, there was a debate by the people in the government as to why the government should remain. because they had made it a motion of confidence. So they had a whole debate as to why they should remain as the government. Well, the next day, the speaker came back and said, listen, I ordered.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I listened to this whole thing blow by blow, and I couldn't understand why the speaker was being kerfuffled the way he was. He admitted that he really was taking it. He said that the next day. I think if it's anything they should be thankful for, is that happened, because there was a huge possibility with a one-seat majority that they could have lost the government. But so he decided after all of these things happened that he announced that he was going to demit the office of the speaker. But I think this being an election year, oh, and last 2 weeks ago, actually, after the budget, he wrote condemning the fact that the government had exceeded the overdraft, and what they had done was illegal. He wrote that a couple of weeks ago. And he said that for him was the highlight of the budget. Now, this is the speaker sitting in control of this whole session, then comes out and writes this article that says all of that, right? I think it's going to be it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, because he has made it clear to them that they haven't seen the end of him politically. I don't think I've ever seen a situation like this anywhere across the region when it comes to a speaker and to the politics of the region. This is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, but
Go ahead, Ben.
there is also the situation where the party has actually threatened him. Isn't
With
that
what?
so?
Threatened him with what? What action?
Words were uttered to the effect that if he is seen on any political platform, they should stone him.
Oh God, no. That's a joke,
Yeah.
but
That's
a joke.
But
Yes.
you know that people will do it.
Somebody else had said that on the other side, that matter would have taken more serious. Been taken more seriously.
Yeah.
But you know something? And of course that is just unacceptable. And that's the kindest word I could find right now to use. It's unacceptable. Stone, having said that, I don't know if the Speaker of the House should really be getting involved in the cut and thrust of the daily political arguments through the media and that sort of thing. I think it could diminish or even compromise that particular office. Now, I could be wrong, but this is just how I feel about it. Now, the gentleman, his arguments in his articles may be very sound, very accurate, very true, whatever, I don't know. I just have a sense of discomfort of a Speaker of a House getting involved in things like that. That is my view.
I get your feeling on it, but I myself have asked him about it, and he feels that he has an individual political and constitutional right to do it.
He's the Speaker
And
of
you
the
can't again say
legislature.
that either.
Well, you know, we have a lot of rights, you know, but we also have constraints and responsibilities. You know?
But what about his position as a member and taking up the cases against the government? How do you feel about those?
When you say
You're
he's a
lawyer.
member, he was a backbencher?
No,
Or he's a speaker?
as speaker, yeah.
No, I
He's the
don't.
speaker, and he is also a member of the party. He's a card-carrying member of the party. He ran for office for the party.
I don't know. I think there's certain things that could create concern that one needs to exercise some discretion about.
Yeah.
And while he's an attorney and he has the right to practice and all of these things and to make a living, it's not every ball that comes your way playing cricket that you need to hit at. I think some of them you leave alone. I just have that feeling. I haven't thought it out because this is a totally novel notion to me. And it's not a notion, it's a fact. I've never heard of anything like this before in my life.
And we're going to take the break right there and come back.
One more for the road. Look, I find you had a little too much to drink, you know. Let me drive. Nah, man, I good.
Alcohol causes drowsiness, slow response time, distorted vision, impaired decision making, blackouts, decreased coordination. Drinking water does not make you less drunk. Never drink and drive. It takes only a second.
Look, I'm really, really sorry.
Sorry? Sorry can't bring back my sister. You've been drinking. I can smell it. Why?
This message is brought to you by this group of insurance companies, the Traffic Advisory Body, and the Traffic Department.
Grenada, 1795. One man with a sense of destiny.
Tonight we stand our ground. Tonight we stand on the side of history.
14,000 slaves with a dream and a promise. Julian Fedor, a Heritage Theatre production, written and directed by Chris DeRiggs, 28th and 29th March, 4th and 5th April at the Trade Center.
People was not made to live like this. It's like we have a cause.
Julian Fedor, an action-packed historical drama.
I see blood falling from the sky, filling up that mountain river, flowing from Belvedere Hills. I see blood.
4 big nights of theater, the play the nation has been waiting to see, with Samuel Gilvey, Lisa Grappy James, Robert White, Dale Devine, and other top-of-the-line acting talents. Opening Saturday, 28th March. Get your tickets now.
Welcome back. And Jerry's not back, but we are back.
Yeah.
So
Jerry's here. Jerry.
No, I just saw somebody who I knew quite well. We found her in her house dead, so I was just confirming.
Oh, jeez.
Oh.
Oh, no.
Sorry to hear.
Well, our condolences to you.
Well, they said no foul play, so
And
I suspect it was,
certainly to her family and friends and loved ones and everybody who will be in mourning now. Oh dear. Right. But we were looking at the whole issue of the speaker, and Dwyer had closed off on a point there, and I think Ati had wanted to say something on that.
I would say something, but not that thing. Except to say, to reiterate, that we're back on here, that because it's one of the things I think Caribbean society has lost is high expectations. Where persons holding certain office in the country were expected to be of a certain kind of integrity and character and positive notoriety. So that, in fact, the question of somebody who is speaker, I mean, when I think back on the Crispin Sorrendos and Clarence Signorets, and, these were people who had impeccable reputations, and were above, as Dwyer mentioned, above the fray, above the political fray, and never gave into political pressure. When it got to a point, they would adjourn the house and call both sides of the house to their office and sort it out and come back.
That's right.
His reason would have prevailed.
You see, Ati, what they have done in recent time, it's just like the attorney generals. They have made them literally hard political.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So the chief lawmaker is not just the chief lawmaker, he's also the chief party supporter.
And who actually,
Because
these people
I heard
go on
one of
political,
them said,
go on platforms.
no, I heard one of them say that their first and foremost job is to protect the party.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right?
Understood.
And so you now have a situation where the speakers, rather than be people who, as you quite rightly say, who it doesn't matter which political party aside, people are going to respect them. We no longer have that. No longer have that.
But you see, we no longer expect that either. You know, we have dropped. We kind of limbo dancing our way through our life.
I like that.
Dropping the bar. We're dropping the bar. You know, when we should be high jumping and raising the bar. But something has gone wrong. I don't know where, when, how exactly, but something has gone wrong, and we changed. You know.
Yeah. On Facebook, TF Richard says, I am of the opinion that the Speaker of the House should never be partisan, or for that matter, open partisan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me, in fairness, right? Let me say this. In fairness, I thought that Juma, which puts you in a very funny position when you belong to the party, but he tried to be as fair as possible. But it's difficult when you are just. I think that is the pressure that he faced on the question of the vote of no confidence. Some inside of his system, if I allow this through, I'm sitting on the same limb. Self-preservation. I'm sitting on the same limb. If it goes, I go.
Right. Ricardo Keynes Douglas says, yes, we people have lost high expectations. We settle for mediocrity. Ricardo, I think we have gone from mediocrity to whatever. Yeah.
Mediocrity, I hate to be so negative, but mediocrity now would be a step in the right direction for us.
Oh, yes. Oh, no. Yes.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
as bad as it sounds.
Because right now we're at whatever.
Right now we're looking up for rock bottom.
Yes, so if we move to mediocrity, at least.
You see, the thing is, we're not only at rock bottom. When you're at the bottom, you're supposed to be looking up. At the rock bottom and looking down. You see, it's and Athley was saying, I forget his words, but how did we get here? You see, you talk about you having the sea moss and the cassava today.
That's right.
You know what went wrong? The pizza took over from the cassava. You see, the KFC took over from the crappo. And on and on and on and on. And this consumeristic, materialistic, the modern gadgetry, which disconnects people from each other, that is the process that has led us to where we are. This is why I say, with more than a little bit of cynicism, and I don't say it with any joy, that a step to mediocrity would be a step in the right direction. And then try to get better, because we really have put ourselves behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
It's a terrible situation. I mean, standards are low.
Oh, gosh.
We set standards for
painfully low.
You know, people are critical without being analytical. Yeah. You know, I mean, we're so negative, and we everybody sees so much in us, but we see so very little in ourselves. You know, you talk about the CARICOM club meeting they just had. I used to be a minister of government, minister of tourism, among other things. And I remember a time we had a meeting in Barbados. And I told him, listen, I must be a minister at that time for about 2 years. I said, every time I come to a meeting, I see the same things on the agenda. I can't stop coming to these meetings.
Exactly.
Okay, we're not getting anything done. I have work to do at home. Okay? I have work to do. And I reduced the frequency of my attendance at these meetings because I didn't have time to waste.
Yeah.
some of the meetings when I became Minister of Environment, and I was in charge of the chair of the regional thing. I used to have meetings remotely by teleconference. By teleconference, save money and time. You gotta go 3-4 days in a plane, in a hotel, spending money on behalf of poor people when you need money to buy stuff for the hospital and so forth. I mean, these are just practical, common sense things that you go. All of these trips, CARICOM. Listen, the agendas are so long. The chatter, Afi knows, Afi was there. The chatter is nauseatingly long. They love the ceremony and the walking up with the flag raising and all of that BS. And at the end of the day, all of them want to be big fish in little ponds and very unwilling to yield up anything to the regional cause. And see where we are today?
Absolutely.
Do I, as somebody who came out of the whale's belly, I hear you loud and clear. I've seen enough politics. Listen to me. I remember in Guyana, maybe about 2001, 2002. I can't remember what the issue was. And they were all seemingly saying the same thing. When I got home, I called up a couple of the prime ministers. You know what the answer to me was? Well, you see, Mr. George, when we were there, you see, but I have a constituency when I get home, you know. I have to report to my constituency and I hear, and I have to listen to them. I said, but when you were at the meeting, you agreed with the decision of the meeting. Didn't you at that time know your constituency sufficiently? And I think after that, I just lost complete faith. And then the other thing happened, what we saw happen last week. They go to the meetings. If you go to the G7 meeting, the G20 meetings, every day you come out, there's a report as to what was discussed, what were the decisions made, and you don't hear nothing from our meetings.
We get a communique.
At the end, they have a press conference when everybody is running out to trying to get home, right? And they can't take your questions, they can't answer your questions.
We get a communique from the Secretariat. But I see Ricardo here saying that's right when Afi talks about, when we talk about mediocrity would be mediocrity would be a step in the right direction. Ricardo says that's right. I hear you. Now showing your privates at Carnival is called Carnival is evolving. Just imagine, you're right. Mediocrity might be the best bet.
Well, it's better than what we have now.
Oh yes.
And the tragedy of it is, you look at a little region, well, not a little region, you know. The Caribbean Sea is about 1 million square miles. It's just that the islands are not very big, but the area is big and resourceful. And the human resource pool is quite impressive.
Yes, it is.
But we are underperforming miserably. Maybe in track and field, and in a couple of other things. Some time ago in cricket, long time ago, when my hair wasn't gray. But what are we excelling in now? We had Walcott, we had Sir Arthur Lewis, we have, I think was referring to Dr. Etienne earlier. We have a few other people. We have some great researchers in Jamaica. And you know,
could I just interject? That's why. So, one sec, that's Everton Weeks turn 95 today.
Right. Well, and that is why I just want to interject our final topic that we're going to have time to even touch on, Black History Month. Does it resonate with Black people?
Could we ask Margaret to lead out?
Why? Yeah, I know, right?
Good.
I think it does. Probably not to the extent that it should. Certainly, in the United States, you know, there have been efforts to be made that have been made to, you know, make it relevant. But I guess, like everything else, it seems to be falling by the wayside for whatever reason that, you know, I can't explain.
You know, I heard George play a little clip, although it was a theater piece, you know, with the students and the teacher. And the students saying every year they talk about the same thing, Black History Month, it's slavery, it's the civil rights fight. And when I listen to it, you know, I say, that is so true. Because we teach, when we talk about our Black history, we talk about the hardships and the struggles, but we do not talk about the achievements. And it's one of the things really why it probably doesn't resonate, because there is no connection between where we came from and where we are today and how we got here. So it is listening to that, you know, and even from self awareness, we say, yes, we have to talk about the struggles and we need to talk about them because they were real and they led our foreparents to fight. But we also need to talk about what came out of the struggle, the brilliance, the fact that Black people are the creators of modern society. A lot of the stuff we enjoy, we do not know that these were inventions by Black people. I remember when someone said to me, "Oh, did you know this is a Black person invent the washing machine?" I said, "Of course, white people never used to wash, so why would they invent the washing machine?" So, duh.
Oh God, don't kill me.
You know, necessity is the mother of invention. So, but it's
But you
true.
know,
And
But Bev, more than that, even the interviews you watch, it was the Black slaves or domestics who had the washing to do. They understand how tough washing was.
exactly.
well, you know, and
They understood.
it's
But you know,
it's
my thing. Sorry, Margaret. Go ahead.
no, I was just going to add to what Bev was saying in terms that we have always been defined just by the slavery experience. And I found myself sort of thinking the same thing watching the debates here, just to bring it forward a bit, in that Black people have the same issues that other white folks have. We have issues of healthcare, we have issues of poor education and poor schools, we have issues of housing, we have all of that. But yet still, when you look at the debates, you're not hearing nobody talking about any of those issues as it relates to Black people. There is only one direction we're being channeled in: police brutality. That's the only thing you're hearing. Every single thing, every single one of these candidates, that's
But Margaret, you
exactly
say
what they're
we are
talking about.
channeling in or we are channeling ourselves in. Which is it?
Well, you know, honestly, well, I guess, you know, it's one of those things that I don't have an answer to. But I mean,
Okay.
I honestly don't know. I really don't know. I'm tired of hearing every time a debate come up, you hear the same thing. Well, you know, how did you? Or it's either that you're being beaten up by police, or somebody called you the N-word. Those are the two things. So it seems to me that the other things doesn't appeal to Black people. We don't care about jobs, that doesn't affect us. Affordable healthcare doesn't affect us. Affordable housing doesn't affect us. Good education, affordable college education, all of that stuff, that does not appeal to Black people.
Yeah, I think.
Well, as the person perhaps of the least dark complexion on the panel, allow me to say this.
You need to spend more time outside, Dwyer.
Yeah, I think that's what he needs to do.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time outside, Afi, but in the night.
Come again.
I'm a bat.
Okay.
I'm a bat.
Guys are just so wicked.
So we have the Rastafarian community in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Yes.
Plays a lead role, not just in that, but in Black consciousness. And they do so in a very positive and comprehensive manner. The radio stations, particularly one here called Freedom Radio, they do a lot in Black History Month. But I find, and as Margaret pointed to, no, I think it was Bev, the inventor of the washing machine and so, and they refer to inventors and people who have been excelling throughout history and so on. But not enough references, in my opinion, to Caribbean people who have excelled in all areas of endeavor, number one. Number two, I think the whole idea of Black History Month is a bit of a short selling. You're shortchanging the people. Every month, not to be xenophobic or anything like that, but every month should be Black History Month in terms of the people understanding the history, because a lot of people don't really understand the history and the forces in the world today do not encourage you to know your history. They don't want you to know your history.
Mm-hmm.
So the education system, you all know that is one of my major fish bones in my throat. The education system, I find, is extremely deficient when it comes to that. Our people in the Caribbean, and this ties into and is part of the entire problem of confidence, of working together. It's, to me, a lot of it is lip service rather than inculcated lifestyle consciousness. I don't know if that term makes sense, and I don't know if I'm conveying what I'm trying to say here. But it's to me, it's not deep enough. It's not sufficiently embedded in people, and it is not used. Let's use an example: the Jewish people. The Jewish people will never allow you to forget the Holocaust.
That's right.
They might never want you to remember that it's they who tell the king, or whoever it was, execute Jesus, free up Barabbas. They might not want you to know that part.
Mm-hmm.
They might not want you to be aware of the fact, and I'm not anti-Jew or anti-anybody. They might not want you to reflect much on the fact that nearly every professional sporting team in the USA is owned by Jewish interests. Or nearly every major media house is owned by Jewish interests. So this is why I'm saying Black History Month is too narrow a window to make a people sufficiently conscious that they are who they are, and they now must become who they can be, because where they came from was a place of greatness. And there is no reason why you only have a Magic Johnson, an Oprah Winfrey, and a Michael Jordan as maybe your first three Black billionaires, and Tyler Perry coming along. There's no reason why there shouldn't be 1,000 Black billionaires in the United States. So I am saying that more information and more time
is needed
to properly inculcate a sense of people's who you are. Not that you're going to be xenophobic or anything like that. Who you are and who you can be.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could really achieve your potential again, because the history tells us where civilization began. Somewhere along the line, somebody decided to cut that thread so that those who created the blueprint for modern civilization are no longer part of the team.
Exactly. You know,
that to me is the point.
As you talk about time, Damian Val McLeod on Facebook says the program need another hour, and TF Richards agree with him, but we have 5 minutes to go, so there will not be another hour tonight. And TF Richards says not to be or sound racist, but if we look at it, they would realize that the white folks, are useless in terms of history or inventions. And Ricardo says Black History Month is also the shortest month on the calendar. Just saying.
That's true.
Education system
Here you go.
in the Caribbean. Years Caribbean authors have been trying to get their books into schools, but the amount of foreign authored books that are in the schools is sad. That is true. We talk about the great Caribbean people there. Dwyer just mentioned them. We have such creative children's books that are written by Caribbean people about Caribbean life that should be in our schools. They're not there. Caribbean history books, they're not there. You know, we still leave ourselves behind and go and reach for the history of other races and pound it in our children's head. And that is why we can't identify with ourselves as a people. We keep I was watching this thing the other day, you know, when they were talking about these great pyramids and kerfuffling and shuffling about how they were created and who built them. I said the pyramids are in Africa, it's black people build them. Why it's so difficult for you all to say they were built by the black people who live there? I mean, they were speaking as if aliens came from outer space and built the pyramids, you know, before they
But
say,
there are people who believe that.
yes,
Seriously.
yes, and just the very location of the pyramids tell you that it had to be built by our foreparents, the black people, is Egypt, is Africa, wherever in Africa they are, you know. And I mean, Africa is not the only place that have pyramids. You have pyramids right across the waters there in Mexico.
But then again, Beb, they may be geographically Africa, but for the rest of the world, Africa is anything that's south of the Sahara.
But you know, saying that, right? Wakanda, that film the other day, I thought was a film in the right direction. I just think we need a couple more of those. You see, like we have Pirates of the Caribbean 1, 2, and 3. We need not just a one-off like that, because I think that film did a lot to kind of give back that sense. But a one-off won't cut it.
But I think, you know, there are black movies out there that are done by black directors and stuff. The problem is they don't get the marketing and the push and everything else that's there for people to see. And so they suffer from that. I think it's the same thing with the black press. You once had a black press that was really vibrant in this country and died because of lack of advertising, because that's the business model that you have.
Margaret, who owns the movie theaters in the United States? Who owns Netflix?
Yeah, that's well, yeah. I mean,
those
I
people
guess
don't want those movies out there necessarily.
Right, that's true, because it doesn't help. And I mean, you had BET, and that was sold to white corporate interests.
And this guy was
you had Johnson Publications. This was a large black successful black publisher. They went out of business.
But Marg,
so I think you
wasn't the problem there.
Yeah, have a minute.
I could say so, and we could say so. We do not support our own.
Jerry, and just give me 15 seconds, Bill. How many of us have gone to the motherland, especially West Africa, to see where our forefathers have come from? You know, and that's the thing, you know, people talk about Black Month and all this sort of stuff, but how many have invested in going to Africa to see what it's all about?
Yeah, but it's not easy. Say what you like, it's not easy to do that. So, I mean, I now hear them talking about creating that. And when we looked at Marcus Garvey, he had the right thing. He created the line to do that.
Black Star Liner.
Yeah.
Black Star Liner, right? But nobody ever followed it up. So it's all well to say to go to Africa, but it's not simple. It's not easy. It's not
the structure, the global commercial and power structure does not favor the connectivity between Africa. Let me give you an example. If you jump on a plane at your airport in St. Vincent, that international airport, and head dead east, Jerry, in 6 hours you are in Accra. If you head straight. But if you really want to go to Accra, you have to fly 8 hours up to London
and then
8 hours down to Accra.
Right.
All right.
Right. And we do not have another hour, you know, we're out of time.
All right. So the leaders of these countries, and Richie's right, people really should visit. But the leaders should sow a network together of that continent and this area and other so-called third world areas and help make some of the changes that are required to really, you see this thing we were talking about, Corona and all of these other things, to change the balances or to end the imbalances that are existing in the world. Because
quick thing
Metropolis is not going to do it.
Quick thing before we go on that whole question of where we are. Look what happened in the Caribbean. Flo came in and they cut out the only channel, the only Caribbean channel, not a soul make noise. Not a soul missed it, not a soul says a word about it. In Grenada, there was the community channel. They stop it, not a soul make noise.
They're going to Chinese supermarket because it's cheaper. They're going to Chinese shop because they say it's cheaper.
Are we interested in ourselves? That's my question. Are we?
No.
And with that, let's put a wrap on this week's edition of Mek We Chat. I'm Jerry George on behalf of all of the...
Jerry who?
Suspects. Jerry
Happy George.
Jerry George.
On behalf of all the usual suspects, we want to thank you very much once again for joining us and for being a part of the program this evening. Hopefully next week, God willing, we'll be back with another edition of Mek We Chat, where we keep it light, but we make sure it's right. So long, y'all.
Bye, folks.
Bye,
Kevin. Bye.